the basic strokes. So these are super cool, and I did not know these when I first started lettering, but they are they look like these random little shapes, and there's some on the back side. But they actually combine to make almost all of the lowercase letters. So if you can learn these basic strokes and master these, you will be so successful with lettering. It really comes back to these basic strokes. So we're going to walk through first all of the basic strokes, and I'll teach you each of those one by one. Then we're going to go through all the lowercase letters, and then we'll talk about what's the rest of the items in the workbook from there. So as we're getting started, you'll notice we've got some guidelines here, and they look kind of similar to what you probably learned or used in elementary school when you were practicing your letters. But I just wanted to tell you the names of these different guidelines. So we have this one. This one's called the baseline. That's where the base of almost all of the letters sit. Then we have what's called the waistline. Think halfway up on your body, right? That's halfway between these two lines. And most of the lowercase letters come to this point. We've got the ascender line. That's where any letter that has a portion of it that ascends above the waistline will come up to this top line. Then we've got a descender line. That's any letter that has a portion of it that descends below the baseline will come down to here. Then of course this is our angle line. So calligraphy in general traditionally is always at a slant, so we're gonna stick with that as well. So we're learning today faux calligraphy. So we're using a pencil or a monoline pen, but we're gonna make it look like calligraphy with the thicknesses. So let's jump in, let's get started. So you put your tracing paper on the top. I'm gonna write right into my workbook. If you wanna write right into your workbook, you can do that as well. So for this first stroke, it's called the upstroke. So I want you to trace the first three, but what you're doing, you're just starting at the bottom, and it's a slight curve moving up. So slight curve up to the waistline. This is called the upstroke, and the direction we're drawing it matters. So we're drawing up for upstroke, right? This one we're going to start at the waistline and we're going to move down at a diagonal. So sometimes I'll draw it right on the angle line to try to help me get that angle right. So kind of go like this. And with faux calligraphy, anytime we're moving our pen in a downward direction, when we're going this way, we're going to add a thickness. So we just want to add a little bit of thickness. And while you're practicing, you can fill it in, or you could just kind of leave it like this. But that's what this is. We drew one line, and then we're just going to add a little bit of thickness to it because we're moving our pen down. So anytime we move down, we're adding a thickness. Next is an overturn. This one starts at the baseline. It's a slight curve up to the waistline and curve back down to the baseline. So again, start at the baseline, curve up, curve back down. It's kind of an upside down U shape. So if we look at where our pen is going, we're moving our pen up here, so it's going to stay thin, and we're moving our pen down all on this side. So it's this side that has the thickness, and we kind of want to transition to the thickness. So for example, we don't just want to be like, there's the thickness, right? Or it's just going straight down. We want to kind of transition to it. So we're just a little bit and then to the regular amount. So it's kind of a smooth transition there. Next is an underturn. This one starts at the waistline, and you're going to come down to the baseline and come back up to the waistline. So it is a U shape, and we want to have it kind of slanted to follow our angle line. If this one we look at it, we're moving our pen down in this side. So this is the side that would have the thickness. And honestly, you could add it like how I did on this one where I added it on the inside, or you can add it to the outside. I'll kind of talk about that a little bit more when we get into letters. But you kind of add it where you have some room. So for example, if you accidentally made that really skinny, if you add a thickness here, it's going to be even more skinny, so you'd want to add it to the outside. But for example, if you accidentally made it really wide, You wouldn't want to make it wider by adding it to that side. You'd want to make it a little smaller, so you'd add it to this side. The next basic stroke is called a comma dot. So this one starts at the waistline. You're going to come down halfway and back up. So you're coming down halfway between the waistline and the baseline and coming back up again. So like this. And then we're moving our pen down on this side, so it's just this little area. That's the spot that has the thickness. Just that tiny little area. So it's very similar to an underturn. It's just a lot shorter, and it's used as a connector stroke to connect letters. So if you go from here, you want to just turn your workbook page over because they're front and back. And I'm going to put a tracing paper underneath just so I have a little bit of padding. Okay, this next one is called a comma dot. This is a combination of the overturn and the underturn. So you're going to start at the baseline, curve up to the waistline, curve back down, and curve up again. So again, let's draw it one more time, and then we'll add the thickness. Baseline to waistline to baseline to waistline. It's just kind of this squiggly shape. So we're only moving down kind of in this center area. So we'll add our thickness right there. So baseline, waistline, back down and back up again, and the thickness is in this middle section. So that's the compound curve. Next we have an O form. For this one, when we start drawing this, we want to start around the 2 o'clock position if this were a clock. So we're going to start here. We're going to work our way around and come back up. So we're starting here, go to waistline, down to baseline, back up, and connect. And we're moving our pen down this whole side, so that's where we need to add our thickness. And this is an O form, but it is more oval shaped. We want it to be an oval, not rounded. And we're moving this direction as we draw it. Next is the ascending loop. This one we're going to start at the waistline, curve up to the ascender line, and curve back down to the baseline. And we're moving our pen down on this whole side. So again, waistline, up to ascender line, and back down. And this whole side is where our thickness would be. And the last basic stroke is going to be the descending loop. So this one starts at the waistline. We're coming down to the descender line and then back up again. So down to descender and back up. And so this whole side is going to have the thickness because that's where we're moving our pen down. And I like to sometimes draw right over the angles to help me get that angle correct, even for these ones as well, because you can see this one, I kind of have a tendency to curve it in a little bit, but really we want it to be nice and straight. So if you draw it right on that angle line, that should help a little bit with that. Those are all of the basic strokes. Please let me know if you have questions on these because I'm happy to answer them. For combining them, what we're going to do, it's really cool. We're going to take, for example, an O form and underturn. If you just squish them together, you get the letter A. For this one, if you have an O form, a descending loop, and an upstroke, squish all those together and you get the letter G. So all of these different strokes that we just practiced and learned, they combine together in different ways to make the letters. So this is really, lettering is not about your handwriting, it's about these strokes. So if you can draw these little shapes, you can do lettering.